Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. It is the final week of the NFL preseason, and I am joined today by Joe Wilmot, co founder, co host here on the Lions Grid. We do have to say, uh, send a get well soon to our third party member so far this early season, Jeffrey Raymond. He's feeling a little under the weather, both him and his wife, so we're wishing them a speedy recovery as they try to get healthy there. But Joe will be running the dynamic duo that got everything started for the Lions Grid here in episode 3 of season 7. So, Joe, we're going to be talking a little bit here about the upcoming week 3, as well as taking a look back at the game against Jacksonville. Um, you had taken Jacksonville in that game to win with, I think the hope was that if you just kept picking the opponents and the Lions kept winning, that was going to be the recipe for disaster, or not disaster, the recipe for success, and we would just keep going with that. You'd take one for the team. But unfortunately, the Lions did lose that game 25-7 against Jacksonville, and it'll lead us to our first question here, Joe. Who impressed you the most in that game against Jacksonville, and who was the most disappointing in your view?
I'll start out with the most disappointing, and that was Teddy Bridgewater. Here's the guy who comes in, who's playing for the backup quarterback position, and he just isn't able to get any points on the board. Not able to drive the length of the field. Doesn't know the offense, and just kind of a disappointing outing by both QBs. But as far as who impressed me, I would have to say Coda. Coda made some good receptions. He made some good plays, and coming off week 1 and then going into week 2, I think he plays the wide receiver position, and I really think that he made some strides in making the case to try to make the roster. So he's a guy to look out for to try to make the last wide receiver position try to fill in the last wide receiver position. But yeah, Teddy Bridgewater, disappointment, and Coda, a COTA, a surprise and unknown character making name for himself.
Yeah, I think one of the nice things here about the end of the preseason, Joe, is with this being the last game here tonight against Carolina, is that we're going to get to see the rosters. They're going to have to make the moves and sort of lock in those rosters. So people who are on the bubble like Coda and some of the other young wide receivers there, Drummond, Green, who we took in the draft. It's going to be interesting to see after this week who actually makes the team. And who did enough in order to make the 53-man roster. Jeffrey, glad to have you here with us in spirit. And again, we hope you feel better soon, bud. We'll catch you on the Lions Grid later on this season. For me, I think the thing that most impressed me in the game against Jacksonville was Gilmore, the cornerback. His brother, of course, was at one point one of the best cornerbacks in the league when he was playing for the Bills, and then he played for the Patriots there and was at the top of his game. But he is an undrafted free agent. He came in and had that interception in the game, and may have done enough through what he's done in the preseason to make the roster. So he's a guy that I'll be keeping an eye on to see if he does make the Lions roster. But he was someone who did impress in that game for me. Again, being an undrafted free agent and stepping up and making plays. Certainly, you're getting value out of players who you wouldn't necessarily think would be contributing. And then the most disappointing for me, I think, has been the offensive line play. Obviously we haven't seen the starters out there, and I think one of the uh, big advantages the team has had in the past has been that offensive line, and so the fact that we haven't really seen that caliber of play that we've become accustomed to over the last few seasons. We haven't been running the ball well in the preseason. The passing game hasn't looked sharp. I think a big part of that has been the offensive line play. And again, the starters aren't out there, but it makes me worried that if we have a few injuries, are we going to have the ability to have the next man up and really be able to have a solid offensive line moving forward? Should injuries happen, because we know last year we did see injuries to Frank Ragnow at a certain point. We've seen injuries to the guard, so I'm a little worried about our depth on the offensive line, but hopefully, as once we start to see the starters, they can stay healthy and that won't be an issue. Moving on from there, Joe, I've got a lot of different buying or selling questions for us here this week. And one of the things that I think has been on a topic is whether or not Jack Campbell will actually start for the Lions against the Chiefs. He has been playing quite a bit here in the preseason, seeing a lot of playing time, getting a lot of reps inside of the preseason games. So Joe, sorry, are you buying or selling the fact that Jack Campbell will start for the Lions against the Chiefs? Do you think he has done enough to earn a starting spot?
He's a day one starter. He's going to start at middle linebacker for the Detroit Lions opening night, and they'll be talking about him on national television. And a big opportunity for him to make an impact and showcase his talent to the world. So this is definitely a buy for me. I think that he's got a good opportunity to make some noise for the Detroit Lions this season. And, national stage, we talked about it last week, defensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year. What better way to do it than on the national stage? So if he's able to put together some games in front of the national audience, it's something that could possibly be done for the Detroit Lions this year.
Most certainly. I think I'm going to be buying on this one as well. I think some people thought that the Lions maybe overreached a little bit, taking him in the first round of this draft. But he was a guy that sort of fit the culture they wanted. He fit a need that they felt they had in the defense. I think he can do a lot to help shore up that run game, which has been a weakness for them, and has really shown that he can be a pretty versatile linebacker, whether he's helping out in the run game or if he's in coverage. Certainly would like to see him continue to improve his ability to be in coverage. But I think he is a guy that can contribute really on all four downs. So I'm definitely in the buying camp as well. I think he should be the starter against the Chiefs, and certainly would like to see him continue to improve throughout the season. Next up, the question, we have another buy or sell here. And I'll go ahead and take this one first is, are you buying or selling Brian Branch will be the steal of the draft? I've heard some different national outlets talk about this. Some people, he was taken in the second round of the draft, but there are some people out there that think he may be, when the dust settles at the end of the season, may be the best player from the 2023 draft. And I'm going to buy this. I'm really hopeful that he can come in. I know the what I've seen from him in interviews talking about preparing for the upcoming game against the Chiefs. He's definitely been someone who can talk the talk, and we've seen him out on the field make plays as well. So he can talk the talk and he can walk the walk. And I'm certainly hopeful. I definitely like Gibbs and Campbell. I think they were good picks. But if we can get the best player in the draft from our second round pick, I am okay with that. And I would definitely love to see him continue to contribute for this defense. So far, he's definitely shown signs of being a contributor here in the preseason. So looking forward to see what he can do when the games start to count when they take on Kansas City on Thursday. Joe, what are your thoughts about Brian Branch? Do you think he could be the steal of the draft?
Yeah, here's the player that comes in. He can play safety, he can play corner, and he can play substitution for a middle linebacker or outside linebacker. He's got many different talents. He's got size, he's got speed, he can tackle, and he's good in coverage. So I think that with his unique skill set and being more of like a nickel back, kind of playing all of those positions at once, we can see this guy coming in and making a big impact. He should have been a first round draft pick, and he was passed up in the first round. And it wasn't until later on that he got picked by the Detroit Lions. But yes, I am going to buy this. He is the steal of the draft. I agree.
Yeah, I can see Jeffrey there commenting, your point about his versatility, the ability to play those different positions It really does. Jeffrey's a fan of that, and it does make him, I think, quite the pick. Adds value there, being able to play those different roles. To your point, Joe, whether it be a safety, being a corner, and when you can play, I think those multiple positions certainly makes it easier for you to add value when you can do so many things. We've talked. We're going to spend a little bit of time here today. We talked in an earlier episode about the sort of change in value for running backs. We talked about how the days of the premier running back are probably gone, and you're not going to see running backs get the type of deals that they used to. And we have another topic coming up about an NFL rumor about a specific running back. But right here, we're going to talk about the combo that the Detroit Lions have of Montgomery and Gibbs. And do you think, and I've seen Dave Burkett mention this, I've seen some other of the local Detroit writers as well as some national folks entertain the idea that the Montgomery Gibbs backfield this year will be better than the Swift and Williams backfield from last year, which were very productive. Obviously, Williams had a ton of touchdowns, and Swift, he did have to play through some injuries there, but particularly that game against the Packers at the end of the season, Swift was having he had maybe his best game of his career. They showed that they at times showed flashes of being one of the best backfields in the league. Are you buying or selling the fact that Montgomery and Gibbs this season could be even better than what we saw last season from Swift and Williams? Joe, what are your thoughts there?
My thoughts on this take is that if Montgomery and Gibbs are going to be better than Swift and Williams, we have to win more football games. As good as they were, Williams got the touchdown record for Detroit Lions, and Swift was that elusive receiving back out of the backfield. And, Montgomery is more of an every down back, 1, 2, 3. And you see Gibbs more in the shotgun as a draw type player and as a screen type player. But, I've always thought Montgomery was a good running back. Drafted him in fantasy football for a few years, and he's been consistent. Hasn't had a lot of injuries. We've seen Swift have a lot of injuries, and Williams was that ground and pound, that hammer to the nail type of football player. So we got a speed back, and we got an every down running back in Montgomery and Gibbs. So Swift and Williams. Swift was a specialty, and Williams was a pound the rock type of running back. So I'm gonna have to buy this. I think this is going to be a buy for me. I'm looking forward to seeing these two in action this year for the Detroit Lions.
Very nice. I'm also going to buy this one as well. I think, you look at we talked about versatility with Brian Branch. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is another guy who adds a lot of versatility, what he can do out of the backfield, catching the ball, running the ball. I think that he can be a spark for this Lions team, especially through the first 6 weeks when we're missing Jamison Williams. He could be a guy that can add some speed to an offense that may be lacking it with the suspension. And then, I think Jeff brings up a good point, though. He brings up the loss of the anime factor with Williams. I think when you look at what he and Swift brought to the team, they were, I think, two really good fits that helped sort of change the culture of the Lions and helped sort of establish this Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes approach that they're doing. And so now they're sort of passing the torch on, willingly or unwillingly, to Montgomery and Gibbs. And I do think they have the talent to be able to be more productive than them, be a more productive combo. I think the two big things, and you touched on it a little bit, Joe, are going to be injuries. Can both of them stay healthy and available throughout the course of the year? But as mentioned, one of my fears in the preseason here is our offensive line depth. So we have one of the best offensive lines in the league with our starters. So if they can stay healthy, if our offensive line can stay healthy, the running backs can stay healthy, I think it's certainly the potential is there for Montgomery and Gibbs to have a huge year, especially when you look at fantasy football. So I'll be buying this as well. But I will say, like most seasons, it's dependent on people staying healthy, both running backs and the offensive line. If there's some injuries there, certainly could derail things and impact their fantasy value. Next up, we talked a little bit about quarterbacks already when you were discussing Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not sure if the Lions, we'll have to see, are going to carry 3 QBs into the regular season or not. I do know that they were the team that proposed a new emergency quarterback rule, and that is yet to be decided upon by the league. But unsure if they're going to carry 3, but there was a report out this week from Dave Burkett. The Lions are looking to activate rookie quarterback Hendon Hooker, who is currently on the non-football injury list because he tore his ACL last year at Tennessee. And the plan is that they will be activating him. And the downside to that, and I guess the question here is, are you buying or selling the move, Joe? I'll start out, and I'm going to say I'm going to be selling this one. This is the first one that I'm disagreeing with the Lions on, or the takes on the Lions with. If you activate Hendon Hooker at any point this year, that will count towards his contract. It really seemed like he was going to get a sort of medical, the equivalent of like a medical red shirt for the NFL, and they would get an extra year of control over him while he was able to let his leg heal up completely. And I think that's what they should do. I don't think they should rush him back. I feel like if you're activating him to the 53-man active roster, that means you plan on him playing at some point in time. And I think as long as Jared Goff stays healthy, Jared Goff is the QB of the Lions this season. I don't expect to see anyone really challenge him for the starting role at all. We're going to sort of ride or die with Jared Goff. So I'm selling this option of activating Hendon Hooker. I think it's better to get that extra year of control in the contract and give him the year to get healthy and get right before he steps onto the field. What are your thoughts, Joe?
My thought is, if we keep 3 quarterbacks, it's a good move. See, we go in with Goff as the starter. We keep, say, Teddy Bridgewater just because he's got experience over Sudfield. And, Hendon Hooker, comes in as the 3rd-string quarterback, and he kind of learns from the 2 of those guys. He's in the active participation. He's in the games, reading coverages. I think it's a good move because, say not now, but somewhere midway through the season or a little bit further on, say there's an injury to Goff, do we really want to put in Teddy Bridgewater, or do we want to let the world see what this young rookie can do? He's mobile. He's got arm strength. I think that he's got a lot of potential for the Lions as a quarterback. Goff is here this year and maybe next year. And after that, his contract's up. So if we're looking for the future of the position, it might not be a bad idea to have him active and have him fill in if Goff gets injured maybe later on in the year. That's not to say we want him to be the starting quarterback this year, but, it'd be nice to get a look at him if Goff gets injured.
No, that's a fair point, Joe, because, we were certainly we were lucky this past season, and Jared Goff was healthy for all the season and did a very good job taking care of the football. Didn't have very many turnovers, and that led to what was probably, if not his best season, definitely up there with the good seasons he's had in the NFL. So, I think having a backup plan isn't a bad idea. And I guess really if I was in the shoes of Brad Holmes and the Dan Campbell, I would sort of take a hybrid of our 2 approaches, not really do the buying or selling necessarily right now, and sort of just wait things out and get a better sense and decide a little bit later on. I don't think here, as we're closing out the preseason, is a time where they need to lock in a definitive answer. But certainly I think they can, if they keep all the cards on the table and make that decision later on in the year, depending on, what happens. I think that makes more sense. So, but certainly an interesting prospect there about, do you give up that extra year of control, or do you start to see, you bring the QB in to start to see what he may offer in the future. Um, Next question here is about an NFL rumor. Now, according to Stephen A. Smith from ESPN, Stephon Diggs wants out of Buffalo. Diggs went to very quickly denied that claim. But would you be interested, Joe, in seeing the Lions engage in trade talks with the Bills to bring Stephon Diggs to the Lions?
No, no. Stephon Diggs is a good football player, but he's also somebody who's going to add drama, and they're going to ask way too much for him. I can see if we give up a fifth round draft pick, like we traded Swift for. Like we got a fifth round draft pick for Swift, and he's a good player. We got like a third round draft pick for Darius Slay and a fourth round draft pick for Jeff Okuda. So I mean, if we're going to get him in a trade, it'd have to be for one of the higher up, the lower end draft picks that we have. Otherwise, I don't see us trading any of our good talent for him.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's a good point. The asking price, I think, is really going to help determine whether or not that is a move they should do, and certainly I trust in Brad Holmes to make that decision on if what the Bills want in return for Diggs is enough. But to your point, Joe, it's also a little bit of a risk because he's definitely been a very productive wide receiver, whether he was at the Vikings or Buffalo. But this would be the second team in a row where he's sort of left them with a sort of bad taste in his mouth, where he sort of worked his way out of those teams. And usually, you chalked it up to a wide receiver being a diva or being a distraction and things like that. But I will say, at least in Diggs' defense, that doesn't seem to necessarily be the vibe that he's giving off. He wants to win seems to be his biggest priority, and the fact that he feels that the Bills may have missed out on their window to win a Super Bowl. I like the fact that he's a guy motivated to win. So the fact that he wants to win, that the Lions, I think, are a team that are trending in that direction. I think he could be a good fit for us just because of that seems to match up. But there is a little bit of a worry that would be the second team that he sort of was not happy with and sort of, went to the front office and said, hey, get me out of here, move me to a team where I'm going to be happier. So there's a little bit of concern there. And another name that I've seen recently here in the last couple of days, or actually today pop up, was Mike Evans with Tampa Bay being another potential wide receiver that the Lions may look to trade for. Do you feel any better about Mike Evans trying to trade for him from Tampa Bay?
No, no, I heard about that on 97 won the ticket, and I was like, absolutely not. This guy's not somebody I want on my football team. Leave him in Tampa. Let him play with Baker Mayfield. And, I don't want to see our wide receivers are not the fault of our team. But, I don't like these big name players that want to come in and steal the show from a Detroit Lions team that's built on team aspects.
Well, I get what you're saying. I think it's interesting. I like the idea that I think the point of exploring potential trades for people like Diggs or for Evans is the thought that, if we could get one more receiver who I think Jameson Williams, the thought is that he could be that guy, someone who can line up on the other side of the field across from Amon-Ra St. Brown, give him have a real number one, number two wide receiver. I think the idea is that would really help the potency of our offense. But I don't think necessarily that we're going to have trouble scoring points, moving the ball. I think we can do that with the players we have. So if you are going to add a player, whether it be Diggs, if it's Evans or some other player that we haven't even considered, to your earlier point, Joe, I think the asking price has to be right. You can't be giving up too much because you've done a very good job up to this point of bringing in your players that fit the system, players that fit the mood. And so you want to make sure that you're not giving up those resources needlessly when you're doing a good job of getting your guys. Because, I don't think I don't think we're in a window with the Lions where we have 1 year to win the Super Bowl and, or bust, right? It's not like it's got to happen this year or it's never going to happen. I think we're in a good position. So even if we just make the playoffs this year, we're still going to be competitive in 2024 and hopefully in 2025 as long as we continue to bring in the right players. So you don't want to see them jeopardize the resources needed to do that to try and win now. So very good point from you, Joe, especially about the wide receivers not necessarily being a huge need for the team at the moment. Um, with that in mind, another NFL rumor. This one isn't about the Lions in particular, but we talked a little bit earlier about running backs. The Colts are shopping Jonathan Taylor, and rumor has it that two of the teams towards the top of the list of potentially bringing him on board are the Bears and the Vikings. If either one of those teams were able to bring Jonathan Taylor on board, does it change your feelings about the Lions' ability to win the NFC North? Do you think that makes either the Bears or the Vikings the favorite if they're able to bring Jonathan Taylor in as their new starting running back?
Well, Jonathan Taylor, 11 TDs in his rookie season, and then 18 in his second season, and then a drop off in production after only 11 games in his third season. Uh, you know, I could see injury plaguing him last year, but is he going to be back to full capable ability? And the Vikings might be interested in him because they lost out on Dalvin Cook,
Mm-hmm.
and the Bears lost out on David Montgomery. So I mean, they're both looking for a running back that can, be a playmaker for their team. So I think that if they did get him, it would be an increase at that position, and it would make them better at that position.
Agreed. I think you look at the Bears. Obviously, they have Khalil Herbert is sort of their default starter there. Then they also have Devonta Foreman, Roshan Johnson, and a team of backs there to help run with him. And then with the Vikings, as you mentioned, Delvin Cook's now gone, so it's Mattinson and not a lot of whole other depth there with the Vikings. So I think either one of these teams adding Jonathan Taylor to their roster definitely is an upgrade for them. Probably more so for the Bears than the Vikings, just because the Bears having Justin Fields, a younger QB, giving him another tool on the offense that can help take some of the pressure off of himself, that can help them win games. Probably is going to be better than Kirk Cousins, who's a little more seasoned and can sort of take. I don't think feels the same type of pressure on him that Justin Fields is going to have during the season. So. Ultimately, I don't want to see him go to either of these two teams because I do think he makes both of them better. But I don't think it changes my opinion on the Lions being the favorite to win the NFC North. I still would be going with the Lions to win it. But it definitely makes the race a lot closer. I think if either the Bears or the Vikings got Jonathan Taylor, I would, again, not be happy and would certainly – I think it could change the impact of the games instead of the Lions sweeping. Because right now I could see the Lions sweeping both the Bears and the Vikings. But if Jonathan Taylor goes to their teams, I could definitely see those series at least getting split, with both teams probably winning their home field games against each other. So still go with the Lions in the NFC North, but it would, I think, impact definitely be a big impact adding Jonathan Taylor to either of those two rosters.
I agree.
And as we are headed into the last preseason game, we haven't seen, speaking of starters, any of the Lions starters in the preseason, and Dan Campbell has made the decision. Well, I shouldn't say we haven't seen any of the starters. We haven't seen the majority of the starters play at all in the preseason. Do you agree with Dan Campbell's decision to not play the starters, or does that give you anything to worry about, or do you think things will be fine? and they'll get off to a great start against the Chiefs when the season kicks off Thursday night.
I think they'll be fine. I think they get in the practice reps. They're all players that have played before. If it's a rookie, they're playing in preseason. All these players have been in NFL games before. They're experienced, and they'll be ready to go.
That is a great point. And you have a very, I think you feel confident in the starters you have that are veterans. And to your point, players like Jack Campbell, who could be starting, Brian Branch, they have gotten a lot of snaps in games in the preseason. So he does seem to be doing a good job of Dan Campbell, that is, of sort of balancing getting players who need those reps in there and then giving the veterans, making sure that they're getting the looks in practice and during the joint practices and things like that, but not necessarily putting them at risk by playing them in these preseason games. I certainly understand people's hesitation, though, because I think the exciting thing for Lions fans is to see what our starters can do after after the success they had last season. Last season it took them a while, right? Through the first 6 games, it was a slow start, and it wasn't really there towards the end that the Lions really sort of turned things up. And so I could see where you could be concerned as a fan that the Lions may come out a little rusty, and the fact that they are playing the Chiefs, who are another team with, early on in the season, I think is the best time to play the Chiefs, because as the season goes on, I think they become sharper and sharper. The fact that they have a new offensive coordinator, they have some new offensive players. I think we're sort of, it's a good thing that we're catching them early in the season. But I think we definitely want the team to be prepared to do that. I think maybe I would have liked to see a series or 2 out of Jared Goff, just so to put my mind at ease. But I'm not going to fault Dan Campbell for the decision. Again, he's making sure that no serious injuries happen, not putting them a team at risk. And to your point, Joe, I think the team has enough veterans that they will be ready to go for that Thursday night matchup against the Chiefs.
Listen. They want to surprise the Chiefs opening night, kicking it off, for the Super Bowl champions. They want to surprise them. Kansas City's getting reps in right now with their starters in preseason, so we got to look at them on film. But Detroit, we don't know anything about what they have planned for opening night kickoff in the NFL. It's the first time Detroit's been on the big stage for opening an NFL season, and it's their 90th season this year. Like Jeff said, we don't want injury, and we're going to come out, we're going to surprise them, and we're going to make some plays. Last year, we played them in preseason, the starters, and they looked good at times, but then they came out in the regular season, and everybody was expecting this high-powered performance, and they let us down. So there's kind of got to be that mental factor in there that, okay, we don't have to live up to our preseason hype,
Yeah, and I think at this point, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done enough where I have faith in them to make the decisions. Like if they feel that the work that the team has put in practice is enough to get them prepared for the season, then I trust them to do that. That's their decision. They have shown that they are good at making those types of decisions, and I'm going to trust in them. So I like your point though, Joe. That is a good point that we may be able to catch the Chiefs off guard because they don't have any game film from these first 3 preseason games to know sort of what new things the team might have up their sleeve as they start this new NFL season. Before they start that new NFL season, though, there is the final preseason game left, which leads us to our last question of tonight's show. Joe, are you going Detroit or Carolina in this matchup between the 2 big cats, Panthers, Lions? Who do you got here for the final preseason game?
I haven't seen enough out of Detroit's backups to give them the confidence they need to, or for me to give them my confidence in a victory. So I'm going to have to go with Carolina again. In the first game, all they got was a kick return. In the second game, all they got was a touchdown. Detroit's backups have looked pretty bad. So it's a chance to make a break on the win on the roster. but not feeling good about preseason football right now. So I'm gonna have to go with Carolina.
I'm joining you this week, Joe. I've been going with the Lions the first 2 weeks, but I've not been impressed. Like I said, the offensive line play. We haven't been running the ball well. We definitely haven't been throwing the ball well. Um, I think there's a lot of talk around the league about Teddy Bridgewater being arguably one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league, and then he came out last week and definitely didn't show it. Now, it was his first game with the team. He hasn't had a whole lot of time to learn the playbook and things like that. But you would still expect a player with his experience and someone who's considered to be one of the best backups in the league to look a little better than he did. So hopefully, at the very least, even though I am going with the Carolina Panthers to win this game against Detroit, hopefully we at least see better play out of Teddy Bridgewater because Nate Sudfeld has not looked good at all. He did have that one touchdown pass Dakota, which was nice, but he's thrown 3 interceptions now, 2 in the first game, 1 here against the Jaguars last week. I'm hoping to see better play out of Teddy Bridgewater because, again, as we were sort of talking about earlier with Hendon Hooker, if Jared Goff gets hurt, I want to feel confident that we have a backup quarterback that can come in and help us win. So I'd like to see Teddy Bridgewater show some improvement this week. I know, again, he still hasn't been with the team a whole great period of time, but he wasn't impressive last week, to your point, Joe, against the Jaguars. So I want to see him take a step forward here against the Panthers and show some progress because hopefully the longer he is with the team, the more snaps he gets. We can see why some people, he'll prove the people right who say he is one of the best backups in the league because after that first game against the Jaguars, I didn't leave that game with that feeling. And I would love to have that feeling of security, knowing that we do have one of the best backups as we head into the regular season. So hopefully he can show some improvement. But I'm with you, Joe. I think Carolina gets the victory here in the third preseason game. All right. Well, want to thank everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of the Lions Grid. This was our final episode of the preseason, so we will be moving forward with the team as they head into the regular season. Should be pretty exciting. Again, they'll be starting that regular season against the Kansas City Chiefs, so we'll be back with an episode to sort of talk about that game, what we're looking forward to, and of course, by the time that episode happens, we'll also know about the roster moves. We'll know who has been cut, who has been saved. We'll also be able to know which players from around the league have been impacted, not just with the Lions, and if there are any potential additions or trades or anything like that work their way out, we can, of course, discuss those. But it's very exciting times, Joe. Football is back in a big way. You have the NFL, you have college football, high school football will be starting in not too long. It's a great
Wolves kick off tonight at 7:00. They're on the stage right now.
Fantastic. It's a great time of year, super exciting for those of us who are fans of football, and certainly looking forward to it. And go Wolves. Hopefully they get a victory here tonight. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Kevin Marhine. Thanks again, Joe, for joining me. Jeff, hope you feel better, and we'll see you during the next episode of the Lions Grid. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.